Right, let's go back to what happened on Saturday at the Champions League final, those chaotic scenes that led to a delayed kick-off outside the Stade de France. We're joined by Professor of Social Psychology Clifford Stott from Keele University. Clifford, very good afternoon to you. Thanks ever so much for joining us. Let's deal with the scenes themselves on Saturday night. What overall did you make of them?
Well, much as you've described it, chaotic, dangerous, poorly managed would be descriptors I would level at the issue. And of course, we're all concerned about why. Why did we see that? Why did that happen?
And information coming out all the time, particularly the multiple stories from Liverpool fans. Overall, when you're looking at who may be responsible for this, the French government being pretty clear on where they see the blame lies, from what you've seen, from what you've read, where do you think the finger of blame is beginning to point?
Well, I've always argued and always will argue it's very important that we take a considered evidence-based approach to understanding why events like these play themselves out in the way that they did. And part of the problem here is the knee-jerk reaction, in particular from the French government, have already come to a conclusion based on what seems to be no evidence at all. But the evidence that we are seeing is increasingly painting a picture that can only be about extremely poor crowd management on the part, in particular, of the French police. The French police are notoriously bad at crowd management, notorious in their over-reliance on tear gas and distance weaponry, lack of communication and so on. And it does seem to me that a lot of the key decisions in terms of restricting the movement of fans towards the stadium footprint itself and then closing gates around the turnstiles, restricting movement even further, and then firing tear gas into an already densely crowded area, all speak of very poor decisions on the part of the police. So I think if there's one single actor here that we should be asking some very serious questions about, it would be the Parisian police.
And why do the French police, the Parisian police, have the kind of reputation that you just talked about?
Well, good question. I think in part it's because they rely traditionally and historically on a deterrence-based methodology that's very reliant on keeping distance between themselves and people in the crowd. So they rely heavily on things like water cannon and CS gas and so on. And they take a philosophy to their public order policing, which is to dominate crowds through overwhelming capacity to exercise and utilise force. And they have a deterrence-based methodology that if they think that they can apply these methods or even show that they've got that capability, that somehow suppresses people and prevents criminality. But the difficulty is that philosophy just simply doesn't work. What it actually does is create circumstances like that we saw on Saturday, or even worse.
And Clifford, let's talk through some of the different responses we've seen since Saturday. I mean, as far as UEFA are concerned, their response has been very much blaming security, saying the turnstiles are being blocked by thousands of fans who turned up either without tickets or with fake tickets. What do you make of their response so far and where they're beginning to point the finger of blame?
Well, it's unfortunate that we're seeing a situation where everybody seems to be blaming everybody else. But as I say, it's important we take an evidence-based perspective. And one thing I have not seen any evidence of so far is any significant numbers of fans without tickets. I mean, the French government, I understand this morning, are claiming up to 40,000 people were trying to enter the stadium without tickets. What we have seen is evidence of local youths who have been gaining access to the stadium. It's unclear what numbers, but certainly they are not Liverpool fans, and there's certainly no evidence to support the idea that there were significant numbers of fans who arrived late at the stadium because of a problem of forgery around tickets or absence of ticketing. This seems to me very much to be clearly about one of those parties claiming that another one was responsible for the problems as a means to deflect blame from itself.
Yeah, and we're seeing that from the French Sports Minister, Amélie Oudéa-Castéra, who's due to speak, we understand, in the next few minutes. She's pointed the finger very firmly at the Liverpool fans. But the difference with moments like this now compared to 15, 20 years ago is that they can point the finger all they like at who they think is to blame, but you've got the counter argument from the multiple accounts from the fans themselves, which isn't just word of mouth, it's video footage, it's actual footage of what people were saying, what they're experiencing. So you've got to be careful about reaching conclusions too quickly when you've got enough evidence on the other side to perhaps suggest that what the French government is saying isn't the case.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in a sense, thank God for social media and citizen journalism at some level, because the evidence has come very clearly to the fore. And I use it quite a lot as a research tool myself. That good is it at helping us to determine very quickly what's gone on because of that underlying video evidence. But let's also be clear about some of the patterns here. You know, we are looking at a situation that's got a lot of similar parallels to the stadium tragedy at Hillsborough. And one of the key elements of that is the authorities immediately blame fans. That there's the sense in which football fans are easy to pathologise and easy for the authorities to blame as the cause of these problems, when in closer analysis what we start to see is actually it's the other way round, that these are very serious failures in crowd management and crowd security measures that have put ordinary football fans who've gone to the Champions League final in situations where they were facing a fear of the loss of their lives. And it's an absolute, it's a really positive thing that we've ended up with nobody dying from this situation instead of facing another stadium tragedy where crowd mismanagement is proven once again, hopefully not after 30 odd years, to be at the heart of what went wrong.
Yeah, it's difficult to believe at times when it comes to these big events, and we've seen what happened at the Europa League final and the treatment of Rangers fans, different but still treated not well at all. There seems to be a real problem when it comes to handling these big events, these big finals, and that problem sits very firmly with UEFA. We'll await what other responses may get from them today. But so often with moments like this, which we wish didn't happen, we hear that tired old phrase, lessons will be learnt. What do you hope to see happening next?
Well, it would be lovely to see a circumstance where we could start to see a much more evidence-based approach where the authorities, particularly in places like France, Italy and Spain, start to follow the guidance that's already there. It's not as if we don't understand these things. What is at heart here is a problem where the authorities don't adopt the guidance. I think we also need to just take into account as well, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the stadium in Paris was itself only allocated the final at a very late stage, I think in early March, late February, where it was actually decided to relocate the final there. So the preparation up to the final would have been a lot less than normal. So what we're seeing here, a whole series of issues that need to be taken into account, and the lesson has to be that we've got to get much sharper at handling these crowd events and stop falling back on tired old stereotypes that somehow it's football fans that are to blame.
Really good to chat. Clifford, thanks ever so much.
Thanks.